Vinny's fine. Hey everybody, it's your old pal Mike. I hope you're happy, healthy, and safe, and welcome back to the channel for this very special 10K Q&A giveaway episode. That's right, not only am I going to be answering some of your questions to celebrate 10,000 subs on YouTube, a mind-boggling number I never thought that I would reach, so thank you so much. But we're also going to be doing a giveaway in partnership with our friends Mother Mary. If you don't know, Mother Mary is a company that makes straps, cases, and pedals even, and it's one of my favorite companies. I have used them for years. They are good friends of mine, and in the past they have sent me things to get real world feedback on. So it's one of those companies that I really love working with, and I couldn't be more excited to partner with them. So a big thank you to Mother Mary for sponsoring this video, and do stay tuned for the details on the giveaway a little later on in the video. Without further ado, let's take some questions. The first one comes from Paul Bullock. Paul asks, I've read that Puisheen comes from the sound that swords make in an animated movie. Is that true? Indeed. The name of this channel and my Instagram handle, a name that has followed me around since college, is the sound of a cartoon sword being unsheathed. It's something that came about because we had taken a night off at college to go over to my buddy Phil's house, and Phil had a PlayStation 2, and we were doing Time Splitters 2 Deathmatch. And I desperately needed a login because guest was already taken, and I was sitting there frozen with the controller in my hand, and I had to think of a string of letters to input, and the only thing I could think of was that Puisheen sound from anime. So yeah, that's where that comes from. Boy, is it a dumb name, but I'm stuck with it at this point. I have thought about changing it many times, but no, I just can't. It's tethered to me. We are inseparable, the name and I. So thank you, Paul, for your question. I hope that illuminates the weird handle that I have. The next question comes from Dave Longan. Could you talk a little bit more about how you got into professional guitar teching? I would love to. I started fixing and tinkering with guitars way back in high school when I was probably the most cavalier member of my friend group. I was the one who was unafraid to take things apart, and whether or not they got put back together, not relevant. But my path to becoming a professional, that was a long and winding one. I took a few years off when I lived in Europe, but even still as a musician, people were still bringing me their guitars. They would say, oh, you can play, what's your opinion of this? And it was at that point that I was like, maybe there's something to this. And so when I moved back to the US in 2006, I really started paying attention to guitars and how they played and what made them fun to play. And at some point, I picked up a copy of Dan Earlywine's Guitar Player Repair Guide, which I would argue is maybe the most exhaustive and conversational tome on the subject of guitar maintenance. And I read it cover to cover like 3-4 times maybe. And so after reading the Guitar Player Repair Guide and working on all of my own guitars, because I have obsessive compulsive disorder and I would hyperfixate on things that were wrong with them, all of that just kind of spilled over into getting offered a job at a mom and pop shop here in York, PA, where I was repairing guitars. And, you know, some things that I hadn't done before, I learned on the job, and other things just kind of came naturally. And when I moved to Seattle in 2009, I pretty soon found a job as a tech in Seattle. And then by that time, my buddy Mike and I opened our own guitar shop where we got to focus on the things we loved. And that's when I discovered the Jazzmaster. And that's when things took off for me. I really decided to specialize in just the one thing because nobody else seemed to be giving them the time of day or giving them the proper care and attention. So that's how it all worked out for me. And I'm really happy about my little journey here. I think guitar repair has been really good to me. So yeah, that's how I got my start. It was basically taking my own guitars apart, other people bringing me them, and then someone was kind enough to give me a job and I learned. So yeah, that's how it worked for me. Next question from Fabian Salomonson. Oh, I hope I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. I tried really hard. I would love to hear you talk about how you got into offsets, and especially the Jazzmaster. So 2010 comes along. I had been, until that point, a Gibson-only player. Everything I did was on my Les Paul or my 355 or my J45 acoustic. I love Gibson instruments, and to be very frank with you, I still do. I love Gibson so much. Even though my heart, they rend asunder so often, At some point in 2010, I convinced myself that I needed a sonic blue guitar. I absolutely needed color in my life because all my guitars were brown or sunburst or black up to that point. I just needed a splash of color. But my friend Mike said, hey, I've got this sonic blue Jazzmaster you should check out. I don't really use it. You should buy it from me. And so, believe it or not, went over to his house, played it for a little bit, and I went, oh, whoa, wait a second. This is what I've been missing my whole life. It was a combination of the feel, the sound, and the fact, this might sound weird, but I consider it maybe like the most sort of Gibson-style instrument in the vintage Fender catalog. The toggle switch, the 2 pickups, because I was never a fan of the 3 pickups with the Strat. I have no use for the 2 and 4 positions. That guitar just made sense to me. Previously, my main guitar was an ES355 with a Lyre vibrola, and that is my second favorite vibrato on the entire planet. And so I was used to string length behind the bridge. I was used to that kind of crazy warble that you get when you just ring the bar. And the Jazzmaster gave it to me, and gave it to me in a lighter package, in a solid body format, with a very cool sound, and from then on it was over for me. Once I started really getting into offset culture and hearing all the complaints that people had about the bridge, I bought into it for a little while, but at some point I realized, well, Leo Fender wouldn't have probably put this out if he didn't think it was ready. So why did Leo put out something that was flawed? And if it isn't flawed, well, where does that stem from? And so that started my whole journey of like figuring out how to set offsets up correctly, how to shim the neck, how to raise the bridge, how they were meant for heavier strings. All of that just kind of naturally flowed. I realized I told that whole story and I didn't show you the guitar, and this is it. This is R2, my Sonic Blue 2007 thin-skin Jazzmaster that changed it all for me, really. I've had this since 2010, and it has been one of my best friends in the world. You can see I have put it through the ringer. I have beat it to hell, thrown it quite a few times, but it still does the trick for me. Still in tune. Mark Cotton asks, hey Mark, how's it going? We've talked a bunch of times. Mark's cool. Mark asks, any chance of you recording, releasing some new music of your own soon? I've long wanted to work on my own music, but life being what it has been the last year or few years, there has either not been much time or it has been spent with me backing other people up, which is something I honestly love a little bit more as a musician. I love working with other people, and I love in particular like trying to flesh out ideas. I feel like I am a really good arranger and a really good idea person, but when it comes to finishing my own songs, like I've got a couple that I love from 2017 that I just can't close the project. I just can't stop, and I get mired in my own perfectionism. So I'm much better being part of a band or being part of a project rather than working on my own stuff. Now, I would still love to put that music out, and I think at some point I will. I just need to find the time, and I need to find the people to play with. But on the subject of releases, actually a guy named Jim Ward, who's a good friend and somebody that I admire deeply. Jim, you may know from Sparta and At the Drive-In and his own projects over the years. And Jim asked me to contribute to his new album Daggers, which absolutely blows my mind, and I could not be more excited for. I'm only on one track. It's called Keep on Failure, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I'm still riding high from being asked to contribute. So do look out for that. Pre-orders are open now. I think the album comes out proper on June 11th, and if you're interested, I will put a link to that in the description down below. El Jimbador 73 asks, any thoughts on the Fender Acoustasonic Jazzmaster? Perhaps a review. I have myriad thoughts on the subject. Number one, this may surprise you, but I actually don't mind the Acoustasonic line at all. I have played the Strat and Telecaster versions of it, and here's a controversial opinion. I don't think I've ever heard an acoustic instrument that sounded good plugged in. There are better sounding acoustic instruments. The K&K pickup is a fantastic pickup for mandolins and acoustic guitars. I highly recommend it. But most plugged-in acoustic guitars sound like trash, so already in my head, I don't have any expectations or illusions that something will sound good just because it looks like an acoustic and it can plug in. So, believe it or not, when I first encountered the Acoustasonic Telly, I was kind of into it. Because it doesn't matter to me that a thing sounds like a full-bodied acoustic. It matters to me that a thing has a sound. And the Telly had a sound that I really like. And in fact, a few sounds. So yeah, believe it or not, I kind of have more or less positive thoughts on the Acoustasonic line overall. Now, the Jazzmaster I have not encountered in the wild. Unlike every single person that I know on the internet, I have not received one. So you're probably not going to see a review on the channel anytime soon. Yeah, literally everybody I know. Hey, more power to them. I'm so happy that they got one. Stings a little bit. Come on, Fender. That's a really good question. Oh, and a note about reviews is that I see a lot of people asking me when I'm going to review a certain model. And as I said in the very first one, which maybe you haven't seen, it just depends on what comes to me. I am depending solely on instruments that I get for repair or modification. I don't have an endorsement or a brand deal of any kind with Fender. In fact, I do think that Fender would rather me not review some of their stuff because a little harsh. Not harsh. Thorough. I'm very thorough. And you know how companies feel about thoroughness and earnest reviews. R-E-N-X-O. Renzo. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm so sorry. Asks, hey Mike, I have a Squier Jaguar with a Mustang Bridge. I want to play chords behind the bridge, but I can't seem to get that when lowering the bridge. What else can I do? You may be running into a quirk of the Mustang Bridge, and I don't have one on me to show you, but I do have a bridge thimble. And the Mustang Bridge, the saddles are very wide, and therefore make a lot more contact with the string as it passes over them, more so than, say, a Mastery Bridge, which has an incredibly fine point of contact and allows a lot of behind-the-bridge resonance to evade, or rather escape. So the Mustang Bridge may, in fact, be deadening some of that for you naturally, and I think that might be by design. So you may be dealing with that. Another thing that I haven't talked about is how important a compressor pedal can be, because a compressor, what it's doing is a good compressor is just bringing up the lowest volume parts of Vinny. Hey, what are you doing? Hitting the camera stand. A compressor pedal is simply bringing up the lowest or the quietest dynamics of your playing, and so these certainly qualify as low or quiet, and so a compressor pedal will absolutely help those jump out. So try that and see if it helps. Hi! This is Vinny. He's my best friend. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Yeah. Who's such a good boy? Do you want to help Daddy answer a question? Yes. I'll take that as a yes. Ivan Distasis. How much does resale value affect your decisions when modding a guitar? This is a really good question, and it certainly does have an effect. There have been times when I have been asked to modify a pristine vintage instrument. There's a red 65 Mustang that comes to mind back in 2011 or 2012. The guy wanted me to route it for a humbucker, and I resisted. And I know that, like, the idea is that you're a guitar tech, you're supposed to do what you're asked to do, but that's still an expensive guitar. That's still a guitar that's worth something, and when there's an untouched example on the market, that's special, and that deserves, I think, some respect. So I refused that mod. But we still carried out the job. What we did do was we found them a body in the same color that had already been routed, and we substituted that for his own. It was in relatively the same shape. It was in relatively the same year. It was close enough, and it got the job done. So we found a workaround so that we didn't destroy a perfect 65 65 or 66 body. But yeah, so I think that's always going to be a consideration. And sometimes it rubs up against my love of preservation of history. Now there, if a guitar already has what I call permission, which is like a refin or a bunch of changed parts, or it's already been hacked up in some way, then go for it. Who cares? It's your guitar. Go nuts. I don't know, maybe get a body from MJT or something at that point. Like, don't hack up something that's amazing. I think if you're doing due diligence, it always has to be part of that decision-making process. So that's my answer to that. Now, since you've made it to the end of the video, it's time to talk about this giveaway. To help me celebrate 10K, 2 lucky winners will receive either a case or a strap courtesy of Mother Mary. To enter, all you have to do is hit the Gleam link in the description down below, enter your email so we can contact you if you win, and, well, that's it. This contest runs for only 7 days, so get your entries in. Winners will be chosen completely at random. The contest is limited to US residents only, but do be sure to look in the description down below for the rules and guidelines. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for 10K. A special shout out to my supporters on Patreon. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next one.